Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mistaken Identity Beyond the Ballpark, where I talk to players and people inside of Wrigley Field, and we delve into their personal lives so we can get to know them better. But before I get to that, I actually had a great guest today. Before I get to that, a little housekeeping notes. So we have a brunch every year, all you can eat. That brunch coming up this year is on November 19th. We moved it from Smoke Daddy to the Brick House. Way more food, way more space. We outgrown Smoke Daddy. We took up 2 floors. We're moving to the Brick House on the 19th. Our podcast, we're in season 2 of the podcast. Will be ending soon. But if you're on Patreon, that will continue with new episodes and new things. So get on over there, patreon.com/Mistaken Identity Podcast for all of that good stuff. Matter of fact, today on the Patreon site, we're airing the movie Rookie of the Year, which I think was filmed at Wrigley Field. There's a lot of good stuff over there at Patreon. It's $1. It supports all the things that we do for Cubs staff behind the scenes. All right, that's out of the way. So let me bring on my guest today. And before we got on the air, I had to get his name straight because you can say it 2 different ways the way I was in my family. But it is Darrell. Darrell, welcome, Darrell.
Hi, Frank. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm enjoying our slower time.
Yes. It's funny because we have been so used to, it's hard to say this, but the playoffs that we sort of expect to be working in October. What do we do now?
That's right. I think this is the first time in 7 years there hasn't been postseason play in Chicago.
Yeah, they're going to be expanding Winterland soon, so I guess we'll be having a chance. Do you go to Winterland at all, or do you just only do baseball?
No, I don't. I'm pretty fortunate. I head south in November and only come back for the beginning of April. Although this year it'll be fun to come back for the Cubs convention. That's a special weekend, and it's going to be extra special this year, having not had a convention for 2 years. I guess that the Cubs convention in 2019 was the last event we had before things started to shut down. My gosh.
Yes, and I wanted to do a virtual one, so I'm happy. But now, when you said you're going south where?
I go to Miami Beach.
Miami Beach. I'm actually going to be in Miami for a cruise that me and Joanna are going on in December. But have you, what do you think about the hurricane going on down there right now? Well, it just happened.
Well, the hurricane hit the west coast of Florida, and I feel very badly for some the people over there. There's some loss of life, lots of loss of property, and one of these days there's going to be a storm in Miami, and hopefully everyone will be safe.
So tell me, what's the connection between a person who lives in Florida but works for the Cubs? Now tell me how all this happened. Like I know Margaret, I believe, is Massachusetts and worked for the Cubs. I thought she was the only one, but now I'm learning that you too have this whole travel. How did that all happen?
Well, it's a long story. As you probably know, I've been with the Cubs for a long time. This was my 27th season.
Okay.
And this year I feel like an elder statesman.
Okay, all right.
This year was a special year because I think we really came back this year.
Yeah.
Last year we were in the ballpark, but it didn't feel the same with all the restrictions, the capacity restrictions, the wearing of the mask, the great concern among us associates and the fans. But this year, even though we didn't play so well, I think our win-loss record was 74-88. Yeah. Would have been better to have an 8 in that first number of wins, but it was still a great year. But getting back to Florida and Chicago, I am a Chicago resident, but when it starts to get cold and the days get short, I say it's time to head to Florida. And I used to go to Florida on business before my Cubs career. And so I bought a place down there, and we're very fortunate. We were able to spend a lot of the winter down there.
Okay.
Miami Beach is a great area.
Yes.
Not much on baseball. The Miami area doesn't support the Marlins very much. They have a nice stadium, but they're more into soccer, and of course the Dolphins are very big in Miami.
Okay. Yeah, I want to be there for 4 or 5 days in Miami before I go on the cruise ship. So I'll definitely be checking out Miami Beach. But I wanted to ask you. So tell me, 27 years. So tell me, how did you even hear about the club's job, or how did that start?
Before the Cubs, I was a downtown banker, and I worked for a bank, and I controlled our department's season tickets.
Okay.
So I came to a lot of Cubs games, and I got to know our usher in our section up in the 200s. We had great seats in the 200s, a wonderful section to watch a whole ball game from. I always recommend it to fans now. Excuse me. And I got to know our usher, and he said, well, when you finish your career downtown, you should come to work for the Cubs. My career ended a little quickly. And so after 2 years of not doing too much, I decided to interview with the Cubs. And I was very quickly hired. Back in those days, the interview process was rather easy. Mike Hill, Julius, Paul Rathje, all those guys, some of you will remember, just welcomed us with open arms. And I thought I'd do it for 2 years, and here I am 27 years later, and just having so much fun with my fellow employees and the fans. Excuse me.
That's fine. I talk about it all the time. I so much, and I want to talk about Mike Hill real quick. I so much love the Mike Hill generation, the era that I was there. It's not that I fear him. I just had so much respect for the man, and I just loved the Mike Hill era. For those that don't know Mike Hill or that era or that time, you want to talk a little bit about Mike Hill, who had passed away now, but you want to talk about Mike Hill a little bit?
Yes. He passed away maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you asked a question?
What were your thoughts about Mike Hill and that time and that era for the Cubs?
Well, it was a different era because we didn't have the crowds. We didn't have the ballpark improvements. Mike was a stickler for details.
Yeah.
He was strict, but he was fair.
Yeah.
And he did an excellent job of managing a very diverse workforce.
Yeah.
And I think he had all of our respect because he treated everyone equally and fairly, but we still had fun. Yeah. We had important information passed on in our pregame meetings. Yeah. And when he came around to talk to us, if there was ever an issue, he treated us very well.
Yeah.
Not that our current management doesn't.
Right.
But it's a different era at Wrigley Field. And one I absolutely enjoy. My gosh.
Yep. Now, what about what was the uniform when you started?
The uniform when I started was a white button-down Oxford shirt with a red Cubs logo on the left front side, khaki pants, and we were required to wear black shoes, a black belt. And there even were days when our managers would come around and do a checklist on whether we were wearing everything properly. And if we were, and I always did, of course, we got a little ticket for some sort of a raffle at the end of the day.
Yeah, I remember when I started, it was the white button-down shirt, the blue tie, the red or maroonish type vest.
That tacky vest, yes.
Yes, these very hot, thick blue pants. I'll never forget that uniform.
We shouldn't dwell on 20 years ago because there aren't that many people who got 20-year pins this year. Yes. But I always remember after we got our first paycheck, Mike Hill would say in our pregame meeting, okay, guys, you got your first paycheck. Time to go out and buy all the uniform parts you need, including black shoes.
Yeah.
Remember that, Frank?
Yes, yeah. I remember we used to always go to the meeting and he would end it with these jokes that weren't really funny, but because they weren't funny, you laughed anyway.
That's right.
I remember that about him.
Yes.
Now,
You know what? Speaking of being around 20 years ago, this was a special year, I think, because it was difficult to find staff. Every business is looking for staff these years.
yeah,
And I can only imagine the difficulties the Cubs had of going up to someone who needed a job and saying, you're only going to work 5 hours a day, and you're only going to work half the time, but it's a really special place, and we're not going to pay you very much. But why don't you come and work for us? And I would have to say that this year, we had so many really, really good first-year associates.
yeah.
I enjoyed working with a whole bunch of them as they rotated through. And I don't know how they did it, but boy, we had a bunch of really great rookies this year.
Now, before I forget, because this is on my mind for a while, can you explain? I love it. Explain this picture that's behind you. I love this picture. This portrait that's behind you. I love this portrait.
It's an artist from Wisconsin I got to know as a young man many years ago, and his paintings have become very valuable. He's very successful, and I've had offers to put it up for auction, but I like it so much that it's going to hang in my house for quite a while.
Yeah, it's just catching I can't even move past it. It's so nice. It's so nice. But speaking of meeting people, who are some people that you've met as a staff person or fan at Wrigley Field that stand out in your mind that you've met over the years?
Well, among the staff, we're such a varied background, and that's part of the 2 minutes we have with everybody who circulates through our areas. You probably get to spend more time with people because you manage them. But if they're coming past me, they're just coming by for a few minutes. And a very varied background. The young kids are always interesting to see where they are in life. And the fans are just incredible. I've gotten to know season ticket holders over the years. Of course, it's gotten different now with the club seats. But I've over the years, I managed the area where a lot of things were done on the field. And so we'd talk to first pitch people, we'd talk to other people who are coming out to sing the national anthem. It's been fun to get to know Wayne Messmer, John Vincent of the national anthem. The Klinger family is always fun when they come there with their sax and guitars. It's been fun to watch these people progress. Kids grow up.
Right.
And then because I've had the owners of the Cubs in my section for many years, first it was the Tribune people. We still see some of those Tribune folks, and their kids are now adults, and they're introducing me to their families. And now we've seen the Ricketts. And I should mention at one point the great partners I've had at my aisle, which was known as aisle 16 for so many years. We were infamous there. Yeah. Sarah Lagatudo was my first partner for so many years. Yeah. We love Sarah, we love Patty. Yeah, Patty. And then Jan Batusik, and now I've got Jamie. So I'm really fortunate that I have great partners there. And then I did put together a little list of some of the people who were fun to meet along the way. Okay. I spent 2 innings telling Jerry Seinfeld about the rooftops. Okay. And my policy is when I have a quote unquote VIP that I speak to them when they request to speak to me. I don't bother them. They're there to watch the ball game. And he motioned me over as I was coming up from the wall, and he said, "Tell me about those rooftops." He was there with his uncle. So I spent 2 innings telling him about the evolving of the rooftops, from a couple of lawn chairs on the roof to big businesses to the Cubs taking them over. I'll always remember when Justice O'Connor, the retired Supreme Court Justice, came to Wrigley Field. Okay. And she didn't throw out a first pitch. She just walked from the visitors' dugout to the Cubs' dugout. But I was impressed by all the young people, especially young women associates, who came down the field to see her because she was so special to young people. and especially young women, for what she had done well before her time.
Yeah. Okay.
George Will was always fun to visit with
Very well.
because
Okay.
he's such a good writer.
Yeah.
And I disagree with him on so many issues,
Right.
but he knows so doggone much about
Yes.
Wrigley Field and baseball.
Yeah.
So he was always a special guest. I regret that he didn't visit this year so we could catch up a little.
Okay. Now,
Never know when you're going to have 40,000 people who will be the people sitting in your section. And I
Yeah.
think every usher could say that. They never know who's going to show up.
now there's a good friend of mine who I know goes down your aisle to go on the field all the time. Jeremiah Paprocki, the new
Oh, we all love
announcer.
Jeremiah.
Isn't his voice amazing? His voice, I like he's been there for years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always special to see him before every game. And then lots of times he comes down and says hello at the end of the game when we're managing the post-game photos, which is a special event that I'm so glad management has approved.
Yeah, yeah. Now, obviously, let's talk about the World Series. We can't not talk about the World Series. You've been there 20-something years, and you probably never you probably thought it would happen at some point, but 2016 was just a special year. What was 2016 like for somebody that was that close to the action?
Well, I probably saw less of the World Series games than I see of regular baseball because I was so concerned about doing a good job for all of our special guests. Okay. So it's more of a blur than a normal baseball game. But what I remember about 2016 is the buildup as we went through the season, anticipating that we were going to go all the way, and then just getting ready for each part of the postseason. And the delightful weather, the being down behind Cleveland, and then coming back there at the end. And then that seventh game, no one will forget that day.
Now, so where were you at, and what were you doing on Game 7 when they won the World Series?
I was Game 7. I was home watching on TV with my partner and our little boy.
Okay.
And he's not a baseball fan, but he was a fan of that game.
Now, did you do any crying?
Oh, I think there was a little. In fact, as I think back about it, there's going to be a little crying, perhaps. And then I was able to help load the buses for the rally. And at the last minute, I got an invitation to ride downtown on one of the double-decker buses, and that was. Will understatedly say that was rather special.
Now, for those of us and those that are listening that are not from Chicago that are listening, what was it like to be on the bus going from Wrigley Field down? I heard it was the largest collection of humans in a long time. Just what was it like watching that from point A to point B?
Well, first of all, I didn't know I was going to participate in anything until about 10:30 the night before, when I got a call from my manager asking if I could come in and help load the buses the next morning at 8 o'clock. And I got there, and it was a cool, crisp November morning. Or like yesterday was cool and crisp, and today is, and it's, the lighting is special. Right. And the team was there, the families were gathering, the VIPs were gathering. And I remember the team going out in the outfield with the Cubs photographer, and they had the trophy with them, which was the first I saw of it in person. And they took pictures out in the outfield, and then they went out through the bleacher gates and got onto their buses. And everybody was so excited to get on their buses and head down the streets, with people standing by the firehouse, people standing along the curb, clapping, shouting as we went by. And I got into the waving part and just had a ball. And then as we headed east on Addison, the crowds built. And then we hopped on Lakeshore Drive. We sped up a little, but there were still people along Lakeshore Drive. And then we hit Michigan Avenue, and it was wall-to-wall people with press, police protection, music. Oh my gosh, and into Grant Park for the wonderful rally.
Now, I did the Pride Parade with the Cubs one year, and I know those crowds, amazing waving, but I know that this does not compare to that. But the closest I've been to that experience is on the parade, on the float with the Cubs for the Pride Parade. I can only imagine just what it was like for you at Grant Park. Now, when you all pulled up at Grant Park and you got off the bus, where did you all watch the actual rally from?
Well, I remember, of course, going down Michigan Avenue and it being wall-to-wall people. And then we turned east on Monroe or Randolph into Grant Park. And as we turned east, I looked south on Michigan Avenue. And as far as you could see, it was nothing but people.
People, yeah.
They weren't just merely lining the side of the streets. Then they had filled the whole area. And I heard there were 5 million people downtown that day. And then we went to the into Columbus, onto Columbus Drive, and got off the buses there where they'd set up a stage south of the old Petrillo band shell. And those of us who were on the buses, and they were friends and family and VIPs, we were right behind where the players were in front of the stage.
Okay, all right.
And there was music and there were speeches and there was joy everywhere. My gosh. I kept thinking back to when President Obama and Michelle Obama had celebrated in 2008 in the same space. Another Chicago lovely celebration.
All right. Let me turn the page here and see if I can get some things that I don't know about you. What are some of your hobbies?
Well, I enjoy architecture a great deal. I like old buildings. I'm in a house that was built in 1888.
Oh, wow.
And I do a lot of bicycle riding. Over the years, I've done a lot of week-long bicycle trips. So one of the trips I've taken is a week-long ride across Iowa. It's an annual event. It's a big party. It's a fundraiser for the communities along the way. And it always starts at the Missouri River and always finishes at the Mississippi River.
Oh,
and there
wow.
are 10,000 bicyclists. And we ride anywhere from 50 to 90 miles a day. 10,000 of my closest friends and me, and I've done it 27 years. I've met a lot of Cubs fans along the way because they've all grown up on WGN and they've all gone into Des Moines to watch the Iowa Cubs.
Yeah. When I go on cruises, I love cruising. I go on cruises and I wear anything that says Cubs on it. Even I don't care where I'm at in the world, we recognize that Cubs. There are Cub fans everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Everywhere, even cruising. Oh, there's a Cub fan. Now, what about cooking? Are you good at cooking? Have any favorites that you can make, or no?
I'm not much of a cook. My partner owns a restaurant, so I get a lot of leftovers.
We're in the same boat. I am not a cook. I don't like to cook at all. I eat more canes than I probably should. I'm around the corner from canes, but definitely not a cook at all. What about traveling? Other than Florida?
I was watching Jeopardy a couple of days ago, and one of the contestants said she'd been to 23 countries, and I was beginning to count the countries I've been in. I've been in all 7 continents.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've never been to Brazil, and I've never seen Niagara Falls.
Okay.
So I think maybe, so I've traveled extensively, and I've done Europe on $5 a day, and I've done the QE2 first class coming home from Europe. But this year, I think I'm going to do a special trip, and that's going to include Niagara Falls, and it's going to include the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Because I got excited about the Baseball Hall of Fame 2 years ago when you were kind enough to put together that Zoom Cubs convention, which was a really good time.
Yeah.
And I found out from Deb Otto, who you probably know, when she was at the Hall of Fame earlier this summer, she was watching the movie at the beginning of you begin your tour. And there they are at Wrigley Field with W flags, and I'm in the background.
Right. You told me, yes.
So I guess I'm going to have to go to the Hall of Fame since I'm in it.
Yes. Yes, that was a really good convention. Thanks to Larry Bright for setting that up as well. Now, do you travel to other ballparks? Baseball? Are you one of those baseball travelers?
Yes, I've been to a total of 12 ballparks.
Oh, wow. Other than Wrigley, I know that's your favorite. What are some other highlights of some of the really nice experiences?
Well, we're all supposed to like Fenway Park,
right?
And it's unique, it's special. But I think my favorite ballpark would be the Giants in San Francisco. It's so well sited. It's a nice size. The fans there are wonderful. And if you're there on a beautiful sunny fall day, which is the best time to travel to San Francisco, it's just almost as special as Wrigley Field.
Now, have you been to the South Side ballpark at all?
I have.
What are your thoughts on that?
There was a point in my life where I was a bit of a White Sox fan, and I loved the ballpark.
I did not know that. Okay, all right. So
it's not that bad. Since they downscaled it a few years ago, it's a fairly decent ballpark.
I went with Donna when they were at the playoffs with the Astros last year. I hadn't been there since they renamed it, by the way, but it's been a while. And I was actually, I hate to admit, I had a good time. I had a good time.
I forget what year it was, but one year the White Sox were in the playoffs. They invited us down to work there. Okay. And some of us worked 2 games at the White Sox. Were you with the Cubs yet then?
I probably would have said no, but no. Now I was there when Mary Beth Gerlach used to ask us to come work with the Bears. You know, remember they used to have.
Oh yes.
So I did that. I did go. I actually doing that now still, but yeah, I didn't do the White Sox one at all, but I did do the Bears. I froze. I just couldn't anymore. But and it's funny because now we're in Winterland in the same weather. But I probably would not have done the Sox. You know, when you work with the Cubs, it just sort of understood that you're supposed to be anti-White Sox. I probably would have just said no to begin with. But I actually had a good time when I was with Donna at the Sox staying for the Astros playoff game. I actually had a good time. That's good food too.
Well, I don't know that we're supposed to dislike the White Sox. Most seasons the Cubs are better than the White Sox. It was nice to see the White Sox at 500 this year.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is I'm a Chicago baseball fan. So if the White Sox get in the postseason, I'm there watching every game, cheering them on.
Right. Now, I'm going to end this real quick. 5 minutes left. Can you tell me some of your favorite games that you have witnessed or been a part of that's done outside of the World Series? I think that's everybody's bucket list. And of course, we want an All-Star game one of these days. But is there any games that stand out to you at all?
Well, I guess the Kerry Wood game stands out for me because I was a relatively new employee and I was not working out 16 yet. I was down by third base. And as you know, we don't watch as much of the game as the fans think we do.
Right.
So I knew he was pitching well, but I didn't realize how well until the sports writers started filtering down and started to ask me for seats because third base was a great spot to get Kerry Wood coming off the field. And so then I started to notice up to the rooftops because one of the rooftops in those days was putting up the Ks for all the strikeouts. And all the Ks were beginning to come across the front of the rooftop. And that was a special day. Of course, any playoff game is fun because of all the different faces. And I guess as we get towards the end of the season, as the excitement builds as to whether or not we're going to be in postseason, games are special. But I probably should have kept notes on special games. I never did. Somebody just reminded me of Bruce Bohr's book. You probably were in it, The Best Seat in the House.
Yep.
Bruce was a college professor, so he took notes and people say, Darrell, you should write a book. Well, I don't have that many details to write a book, but any game we win is fun to see all the happy faces and the fans who maybe waited a lifetime or half their life to come to a game at Wrigley Field, a hallowed institution.
Yeah, you should write a book because I definitely plan on writing a book when I'm done. When I'm done, and I was covering I definitely plan on writing a book. I've seen so much at the age of 16 at the Cubs up until now, my 40s. But just so many experiences that. And every day is so different at Wrigley Field. It's just, and some fans are just funny. But I I'm definitely gonna write a book. I think I would definitely read your book. You're right there in the heart of that. I would definitely read your book.
We'll have to think about that, Frank.
All right. All right. Now, is there one thing I want to end on this? Is there one thing about you that those of us that work with you would be surprised to know about you? Like, is there one thing you can think of, or do we pretty much know the Darrell that we see is the Darrell that we get, or there's something that we would not know about you? They would be like, oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know that.
I guess those of you who know me and know the fact that I'm smiling all the time and welcoming strangers every day into the ballpark, but know that would be surprised to learn that I'm a fairly shy person, that I spent over 20 years as a private banker and dealt with people's confidences and respected those, and they respected me. And so to turn around and completely take up another career would surprise a lot of those former clients. And my current season ticket holders and friends at Wrigley Field would be surprised to learn that I was a serious economic type banker for many years before being out in the cold, being a baseball fan.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now, I said that was the last question. I'm going to ask one more, and that is, what is you have a goal for the amount of seasons you want to work at Wrigley Field, or they're just going to go until you can't go anymore? Or do you have a set number you get?
Well, this year was rather special because, as I indicated earlier in this podcast, I'm beginning to feel like an elder statesman at the ballpark.
Okay.
I got more questions than ever this year on how many games or how many years have you worked here?
Okay.
And I'm getting a little older, the days are getting longer, but it's still fun. On a scale of 1 to 10 on the fun level, I would say my job at Wrigley Field is a 12.
Okay.
I always wanted to work an all-star game. I always wanted to work postseason. I want to work. I'm sorry, that was not correct. I always wanted to work postseason. Always wanted to work a World Series game. I've always wanted to work an all-star game. So that would be a goal if it happens in the next few years.
Okay.
I have so much fun. I can't imagine not working at Wrigley Field. Love the managers, love the fellow staff members, love the fans, love the owners.
Yeah.
We are so blessed, Frank, that they ask us to come back year after year after year.
Yes.
So my goal is an all-star game.
I gotta say, that's my list. That's on my bucket list too. I did not do 1990 when it was last there. I didn't even go when it was last there, but I definitely I got the hockey down. I got the football game there down. All-star game would be a bucket list for me. Yes.
The Winter Classic was a special winter afternoon. The Northwestern football game was fun. I was at the 1990 All-Star game as a fan. I was at the first night game as a fan. I was at the second night game, the real first night game as a fan.
Now,
and some special moments for me as both a fan and as a staff member.
Now, you're going to go to London next year to the Cubs, Cardinals?
We're beginning to talk about it, Frank. How about you?
I am too. I am too, yes. I think that's another once in a lifetime experience, to see the Cubs play the Cardinals in London. So go ahead.
I would have to say that the fact that we're playing the Cardinals in London makes it extra special.
Yes, I agree. Well, Darrell, it has been great. Talking with you is always great. Seeing you in the lower bowl, as you said, fans think that we watch the game, and we never watch the game. I'm always running around, so when I do see you, it's usually less than 2 minutes. But every time I see you, having a great time, smiling on your face, definitely appreciate everything that you do for fans and for all of us, keep us smiling and happy. So thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great spending some time with you, Frank.
All right, and I will catch you during the Cubs convention that's back in January.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, and thank you all for listening to another episode of Mistaken Identity Beyond the Ballpark.